And we're live. Hello,
Yay.
everybody. Hello and welcome from the sunny metropolis of Owen Sound, located snugly in the budding rural metropolis of Owen Sound, I should say, located snugly in the northern half of southwestern Ontario. Sorry, my recording inside my brain got a little jumbled there. Still waiting on the coffee to kick in. Hi, hey, Rebecca, how are you doing?
Hi,
Hmm.
I made it.
Yeah, so glad to have you. You're looking very rocky today, I must say. Um,
My rubber
you
plant shirt.
nice, nice. I like it. I, of course, am wearing my Value Village find of some blue collar uh, work shirt that I liked because it had no logos on it.
Mm,
So I picked it up. And regrettably, it does not have a little name tag that says like Glenn or something.
mm.
In fact, it's kind of funny. I was this past weekend. I was at the community center chatting with the maintenance person whose name was Dale, and I remarked on his shirt and his name on that was embroidered right on his shirt, and I thought that was
Fancy.
particularly nice, very fancy. You know, you don't get high quality uh, um, uh, stitchmanship personship these days.
You can
Embroidery
buy
is a
a
rare commodity.
machine. You can buy a sewing machine. You put in the computer chip, and there's a picture, and it will just embroider you that picture, whatever it looks like.
Oh, see that feels to me like that cheapens it somehow. Either way, Dale had his name all over his shirt, and he was lamenting to me that he felt like he could not donate his used shirts to secondhand stores because he was afraid that everybody would be walking around town wearing his work shirts. Um, yeah, and I said, well, in a situation like that, make sure you donate to one of those bins that you see in like parking lots or whatever. Those tend to go to overseas with their clothes rather than to a local store, which is its own problem in and of itself. But we can get into disaster capitalism at some other point in time. Regardless, how's your week been?
Ah!
I know, sorry, I should have queued that up. Mm.
Dealing with government forms and the usual.
Oh, mercy. Right, forgot about that. Yeah, that
It
wasn't
seems like one
particularly
simple
fun.
form, but it's a week and a half's worth of work. Oh my god.
That's interesting, and maybe that could be a spring point for us to talk about one of the things that we had sort of tangentially brought up in the past, but we haven't actually had a chance to sit down and explore. And today just might be that day because it is one of those ideas that after you suggested it, it's been percolating around in the back of my head as like a potential foundational business or a business that we could use within the VAWMA setup. And oh, we just lost you. Are you still there? Oh, we are having technical difficulties. Let's see.
Was
There
that
we go.
me or
There we
you?
go.
I didn't touch anything.
Okay, no, it may all be me, but we have you back now. Technical difficulties averted.
Yeah.
Um, I must have forgotten to make uh, the sacrifice to the tech gods
Mm,
or what have you there.
yeah.
Let me just make sure that I'm trying some new things here this week. So we've got a slightly different setup here in terms of our presentation. So it'll be nice for people
My
to see that.
video is working.
Yes, yes, and so right, what I was going to say before the video left. The let's first off say hello to everybody who's here. Hello, thank you for coming to our stream. We appreciate you, and you are awesome. Please don't ever forget that. Second off, we are the Voluntary Association for Work and Mutual Aid, such as it is, which is an acronym or becomes an acronym that we like to pronounce as VAWMA. which you can see down here over at Rebecca's left shoulder or elbow. There you go. And we have a hope and an idea that we would be a group of people, group of friends coming together, checking in on each other on a regular basis as a mutual aid society, intentionally making sure that nobody is in crisis mode, and once we've gotten everybody to the point where everybody's crises are resolved to one degree or another, then we recognize that we are a group of friends whose primary skills are our labor, training, the education that we've received, the skills that we have, the talents that we have, and we can bring these things together in the form of our time, in the form of our effort, in the form of our good old-fashioned elbow grease and stick-to-itness, and we can pool those resources that we have, as well as our material resources, in order to create a business, in this case a cooperative business, where everybody has a stake in the business. One member, one vote, and when we make a surplus, we divide that surplus between everybody based according to what they did to contribute to that surplus. If you worked a lot of hours, you get a little bit more of the cut of the surplus than somebody who worked part-time. Also, if you're a consumer member and you spend a lot of money with us, you will get a few more shares out of the whole of what we make. And at the end of the day, we're doing all this so that we can have a business that will pay us a living wage up front and will give us control over our schedules. And from there, once we start our first business, we then just keep starting business after business after business after business until everybody who wants to has a good living wage job with control over their scheduling, ultimately giving us control over our lives. And when we make a surplus, again, we give it back to the community in the form of patronage, the shares that we generate based on the contribution that we make to the businesses that we're making in our community. And then from there, it's up to us to dream about what we can do and what we can do with what we make in the process. And I get excited when I think about it. It's a big vision. It's a big plan. And I think I kind of captured the entire VAWMA idea in a whole. Did I miss anything? What do you think?
No, that was a great introduction. I was just thinking, it sounds all like a weird and wacky, crazy idea, but you're just describing like a normal business, only instead of some rich guy in Toronto owning it, the workers own it.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's almost the same.
And that's pretty much that was the eye opener for me, right? Is like realizing that when you have like a big box store or something that's owned by a small handful of people through Bay Street or Wall Street, as the case may be, then that money is fundamentally that it makes as profit is money that's extracted out of our local economies and taken away, filtered through Bay Street, taxed,
Yeah.
and then they figure out all sorts of creative ways to come up with ways to not pay tax on it, and then they pay out dividends to their shareholders. And if you're lucky, maybe a shareholder might live in your local economy, but
Doubtful.
I don't know. For me, it seems like a really top-heavy way of redistributing the wealth and that local economies produce. And for my money, as a working member of society, I would want to have a say over my life, and B, a share of those millions upon millions of dollars that are extracted out of our local economy each year. And I mean, it's great that some guy in Bay Street now has enough money to buy his third or fourth yacht, but I would really like to be able to afford a place to live with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like that's asking for too much. I feel like it's very reasonable. But But the trick is that nobody's set anything up in our society yet that allows for workers to buy into something that they will be part owner in. The default is you have to wait for somebody else to come along, start a business, and hire you. And if you're lucky, the person who's hiring you is a good, fair, noble person. But that's a gamble. Like
Luck.
you can't guarantee that, and it's also dependent on what mood they're in that day. Like, what happens if they just have like a series of successive bad things that happen to them, and then you walk into the room, and you just happen to be the recipient of all the anger and the angst and the stress that gets built up when you're the person in charge of making sure that the enterprise doesn't crash into the rocks, so to speak. So,
Or the thing that commonly happens is your, boss has nothing to do with the business. They're not there every day. They don't know what you need. Maybe they go off on a course and get some idea and they're like, oh, we're going to change it and do this thing this guy told me in this course. All right, change everything. And your life is upside down and they don't know what they're doing. They don't know the effects they're causing, or, for whatever reason, you just cannot be a good, manager if you're not involved in the on the ground.
hmm.
And so many businesses, they just don't care. They don't care.
I mean, it reminds me of two stories. I'll probably forget the second, but the first one is personal, where it's I would always rue whenever there was a new VP of anything coming into the company, because
Yeah.
A, they never told us, and B, it usually meant policy changes just for the sake of policy
Yeah.
changes. Because somebody new was coming
Every
in and they
time.
were establishing their identity and they were cleaning house and they were, going to do things differently from whoever they were replacing, because they,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, which usually meant I lost access to tools that were vital to do my job.
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
and like
Why are you doing your job?
yeah,
Uh,
it's like, oh, it just makes my job harder and expect more out of me and pay me and then penalize me, take away my raise when I can't do the job I was hired to do. Like
yeah.
it was just it was pandemonium. And then I get to thinking, and the second story I didn't forget, was like how the anecdotal, or not the anecdotal, for me it's anecdotal. For everybody else, I would highly recommend Google searching the downfall of Sears, and like what happened with Sears, the giant megastore corporation there that was like a mainstay of my childhood. I don't know about you, but we always had the Sears catalog growing up, right? And they always had the toys in the back, and that was like the highlight of like the year when the Sears catalog would come in or the Consumers catalog would come in,
Hmm.
and they were eventually run into the ground by some, I'm just gonna say, I don't remember the person's name, but somebody who had read a lot of Ayn Rand and had
Oh
ingested
no.
an objectivist philosophy
Is
into
that
their
what
blood.
happened?
That's
Oh
exactly what
dear.
happened. So they split up Sears into basically competing fiefdoms, where
Yeah.
each department ran itself independent of every other department and was then put in competition with every other department to outperform and outcompete every other department, which makes no sense, in on like anyway,
Cooperating. Cooperating is key. Working together. We all
right?
help each other.
And
Dog eat dog sounds
oh,
fun if you're picturing yourself as the top dog, but then there's nobody wants to hang out with you, which happens every time there's an Ayn Rand collective or business that's run in an Ayn Rand kind of way.
yeah,
All the dogs eat each other, and then there's no one left.
yeah, true. And nothing but harsh feelings and hurt feelings along the way, nothing but traumatized people along the way. And that,
Hmm.
I think, is something that really needs to be taken into consideration. And as we build VAWMA, as we build what we will become, I think it's vitally important to ensure that we almost bring on staff people who are trained in how to help people come to grips with the fact that they've been traumatized their entire lives by living under capitalism, by being compelled to be a wage slave, by losing their freedom to just be who they are, uh, what they would be when they want to, as they can, because everything's kept behind paywalls.
Yeah.
In our society, everything worth doing, costs money. And if you've got the
Yeah.
money, great. If you don't have the money, sorry,
And
that's
then they
just
go,
gross.
why isn't anybody buying our stuff? Because they're not making any wages. They
And it
gotta
just feels
pay them.
it really feels like we're in late stage capitalism, and that at some point, like there was a meme I remember seeing once of like a couple of high powered businessmen in business suits standing on their skyscrapers at the helm of industry, and one of them looking down at the at the implied peasants, sort of like laughing. It's like, fools, they'll never be able to afford what we're selling. And the other guy just stands there sitting up, just has that moment of epiphany, and just like, wait, say that again.
So
And really, it feels like we're gotten to that point in our society, which let's bring this back to where I thought we might take this direction, or this conversation, in a direction here today, which again, I still have announced my intention. I haven't actually announced what it was that we're going to talk about, but that is the idea of like forming a cooperative which is built around the needs of individuals on the type 1 diabetes spectrum. I don't know. What's
I don't think
diagnosis
we
group?
call it a spectrum, but
No, no, because
it,
it's type
it really
1.
could
It's
be
it's
because
a
there
no,
are
it's not a
different
spectrum.
types.
It's a yeah. I not well. Anyway, the group of people that have type 1 diabetes. Um, as you pointed out, there is a need for persons in that particular field to be connected with people who are experts in that field, who are able to listen to the needs and actually have a good working functional understanding. And as I understand it, that just doesn't exist in Ontario right at the moment, and certainly not in my part of the world. I don't think in your part of the world.
Very, very rare in rural areas and hard to find in the city. It exists. There are experts. They exist, but they are so hard to find. It's been 35 years for me.
Wow.
35 years, and I finally have a competent endocrinologist.
Mm. That's way too long,
That's way
really.
too long.
And mercy. You had proposed, you had written a letter to a nonprofit group, not-for-profit group. I can't remember their name, but it was
Co-op.
proposing an idea that we would create a cooperative where we would bring together, again, a multi-stakeholder cooperative, where we bring together the professionals, doctors, nurses, PSWs, whatever, the people who are trained in type 1 diabetes care, and together with the clients, the people with type 1 diabetes, and bring them together in a way where it's not the old hierarchical system where it feels like you're pretty much begging to be listened to by the doctor who is indifferent because you're just patient number on a list of however many on today, and if they internalize and I don't know, I'm beginning to project now, but it just feels like in a lot of ways uh, for GPs and for people who aren't familiar with what type 1 diabetics go through on a day-to-day basis, and I am not one. I have like a basic understanding of what happens, and enough to know that there's a lot more that I don't. And to me, it just seems obvious. I'm beginning to ramble, but it just seems obvious that it would be that this would be a good service to create uh, for our members. Now, I don't know in Ontario, although this is probably going to be changing under Doug Ford, if it would this would actually fit in the VAWMA model. Now that I think about it, or as I'm thinking about it here on live on stream. Hello, everybody, and that is in Ontario, it's not legal yet to run a medical business as a for-profit business, and VAWMA is intended to be for-profit,
There,
surplus based, right?
well, okay, but VAWMA is also a co-op,
Yes.
as it would be a system of co-ops, and the model would be this. In Peterborough, they have a home care co-op.
Yes. It's probably a not-for-profit co-op, is what I'm thinking.
However, it runs, I am
Hmm.
sure we can make the rules so that that will work. Like it doesn't, they don't all have to be for profit. There would be a carve out for that to be whatever it should be.
I think what would probably end up happening, legally speaking, is that we would kind of do what Mondragon did, where each cooperative would sort of like operate as like its own independent thing,
Mm-hmm.
um, or perhaps better idea. We will have like the for-profit businesses operate under like one umbrella, the VAWMA umbrella, and then we'll have invite other non-profit cooperatives, like in this case the type 1 diabetic client professional cooperative would be a non-profit. It would be technically, legally distinct, independent, but would also be a part of, invited to be a part of like our, what Mondragon calls its Congress, which meets like once a year. In our case, it would be our quarterly meetings along with our annual meeting, and they would get to participate in. So we would then extend or work out a deal where we would extend to the members of the nonprofit, the type 1 diabetic co-op, membership within VAWMA as a whole, so that as a community member, whenever they would have access to vote for our board members, they would have the ability to what do you call participate in patronage. So if they purchase at one of our stores incidentally, they would have return on investment that way. As a client of the non-profit entity that works with the doctors and the nurses and stuff, they would also have access to be able to sit on the circle that runs the non-profit. So if we ever have a situation where we have a problem doctor, for lack of a better term, who is not listening to our clients, who is treating our clients like children and dismissing their concerns, even if they are right at the end of the day, we need doctors who take into consideration our entire, you know, well-being, which involves, how we receive information and how we integrate that information into our lives. And if we have an antagonistic doctor, that's not great for us. Now, is what I'm thinking. Maybe other people will feel differently in that sort of situation, and I'm probably not even going to be a client member. But if imagining that I was, I would have the opportunity to sit on the circle that would that doctor would be a part of, and I would say, hey, I object to the policies that allow for the doctor to basically act like a jerk. And I think we need to either fix these policies so that we have good bedside manner, or we find a new doctor, sort of thing. and that would have to be addressed. That would have to be taken into consideration. And certainly when it comes to other things like access to information for our clients, we would want to have as open a relationship with them as we would legally be permitted to have. And have as few barriers to access for information for our clients um, as possible, as legally possible, sort of thing. Enough to make sure that nobody can come in the street off the street and get people's medical records or anything, but enough so that all our clients are going to be able to actually have a feeling of, like, for once in their life, this, they actually have a sense of ownership and control
Mhm.
over where things are going. Is kind of where I'm thinking with all that. I'm sure you've got some thoughts with regards to all that as well.
Oh, a few thoughts. Oh my goodness. I don't know if now is the time or.
Well, if you want to, sure. I'm just going to read some of the chats here. If you want to expand on like some of the ideas you may have had for how, like, a cooperative, built around ministering, my old language is coming out, but meeting the needs of our people in the type 1 diabetic community there.
Mhm. Or potentially it could be an idea for people with chronic diseases because they have completely different
Mm.
needs from people with temporary diseases, like curable disease, even cancer. You can find a doctor who's good at cancer, who will give you sympathy for having cancer, and won't blame you for having cancer. But if you have a chronic disease that's hard to diagnose, that's hard to treat, it is so common for the doctor to refuse to diagnose any of your other problems, to treat you like crap, to
Mm.
traumatize you. For people with chronic diseases, this is the norm in Canada. We do not have a system to treat people with long-term chronic diseases that aren't, easy to diagnose and treat. Just
Mm.
there's nothing. People with lupus or EDS or anything that is a bit weird, we just cannot find a doctor. Doctors treat us like crap. It's, an average of 10 years to get diagnosed while people are living on, ODSP, waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting because they're in pain. They can't work. And this is stupid. This is
Mm.
really stupid. So we were talking about type 1 diabetes, but maybe it's autoimmune diseases or something like that. But type 1 diabetes would be the main one that costs so much money to treat and is not, they're routinely getting ignored so that they cost so much more money to the healthcare system. And they people with a long-term chronic disease like that can end up knowing more than their doctors.
Mm.
Commonly, a huge percentage ends up as a hostile relationship because the doctor refuses to believe that living with a disease for 10 or 20 or 30 years, you get more education than a doctor did in a few weeks at medical school. Um, and you live with it with your body, and it is just so common for the doctors to get hostile and to
Mm.
refuse to understand that the reason the patient isn't a doctor might not be because they're stupid. Maybe it's because they didn't want to be a doctor and they're perfectly capable of learning about their own disease. So, people with a long term chronic disease need to be able to fire the doctors if they're incompetent
Yeah.
and not rely on um, higher ups in the government who don't know anything about the disease and don't care
Yeah.
to completely fail. There's no supervision, practically no supervision. It's
Well,
impossible.
there's
There's no mediation. You can't talk to your doctor. You have to sue them. Like, you have to file a complaint or sue them. That's your only option. You can't
And
just discuss things with them.
I would imagine any recourse that you might have would be mediated through the College of Physicians or something.
Yeah. So
And
you're talking to somebody who has no clue, absolutely, like, knows even less than your doctor does, and they're the one who's supposed to be mediating this. They're not qualified.
well, and
They're
it's a
absolutely not
guild
qualified.
made up
They're
of
a patient advocate.
other physicians, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
they're not qualified to even make a decision about a chronic disease that, the patient might know a lot more than them about.
hmm.
So
Sounds
the
like
patient
we're
basically will fire their doctors.
yes, yeah,
This is
and
not
that
for regular people with a temporary disease that's easy to diagnose.
yeah. And can you imagine if we could make the barrier for entry into a relationship like that, where you could become a part of the VAWMA long term care cooperative, yeah,
Hmm.
and it'd be the same as like community membership or union membership, $25 a month for $300 for the year. On ODSP, you might be able to afford that and get access to a doctor and good quality care. Knock on wood. you know.
It
Um,
sounds like they had some success in Peterborough with the home care thing.
hmm,
And that's another thing where you need good home care nurses, uh, and it's good to be able to get rid of the ones who are bad, and the clients should have a say in that.
yeah. I mean, it's like traditionally, as I understand it, the way our medical services work is that it's the client of, sorry, it's the College of Physicians that negotiates with the single payer, in our case, the Ontario government. What doctors will be paid, how much, per patient, per visit for XYZ, diagnosis or whatever it is, and then those doctors, those members of the College of Physicians, then go out based on the money that they are anticipating to get from the government for each individual patient that they get or see, as the case may be. They then go out and start a practice, which is a fancy way of saying a business. And they are the dictator of that business, under the College of Physicians, and they make money based on how many patients they see. And if you're lucky, you're a community that is able to attract enough doctors to your area to meet the need. I'm living in a part of the world where we do not have enough doctors to meet the need,
And that's
and
that's because of the government. If
mhm,
you go to Goderich, they did a few years ago, they did a huge push where they came up with their government, their local government came up with a plan to attract doctors to the area, and they have attracted some really good doctors. They have just a much larger percentage of really good doctors for the population than Owen Sound does, because they offered them, pay off your house or your educate or whatever. They gave them a good deal to come to Goderich, and had programs that would help the doctors get used, come to Goderich and see how nice it is, and it worked.
mm,
That any town could do that,
mm.
but they don't.
I'm as you're talking about all that, I'm also thinking like once we get the doctors here, how do we organize them in such a way so that we don't end up recreating the system as it exists right now, where you have that divide between the patient and the professional, and how do we get it to the point where uh, if needs be, the patients can fire the professional. And I think the cooperative model might work to a certain degree. It'd be interesting because like we could we could do it one of several different ways. we could set it up so that each professional member is also a member of the cooperative, which would make firing them very difficult, because they would be a part owner themselves. Um, on the other hand, uh, what we can do in a scenario like that where the doctors would be part owners as well, is again we make the clients a part of like the decision making process that determines what the policy is or what the guidelines are, what the HR policies are. With regards to this, somebody in the comments talked a little bit about how. Rather than this being a necessarily a policy thing, this might be like bedside manner might be an HR thing rather than
Yeah.
a fireable thing. Fair enough. But HR policy comes from somewhere, and
You can
that
have
policy is going to
policies
come
about it.
from our circle
Mm.
with our members. And so where am I going with all this? The what I'm thinking is that we could do in this scenario is we can um, form the group that of people who need these services. So the clients. We start with the clients there, and then from the clients we then look to the professionals. We start putting ads out for professionals, and we offer to hire them first, and then offer them to buy in to become member owners of what it is that we're doing. Um, in a scenario like this, so that the nurses, the PSWs, and the doctors again all have, like every other worker within VAWMA, have a say in their working conditions, their hours, their pay, their all this fun stuff. But so do the clients, and they come together to work out something that works for both of them, for both parties. Is the plan? Is the hope? Is the dream? Is the vision? Um, uh, yeah.
And
Sorry.
we have a model already in Peterborough.
Mm-hmm.
So this is
Right.
something that has been going for more than a year. I can't remember how many years, but it's been a little while. So it obviously it can work, and there are people who have tried it out already.
There's an entire chapter in the book Humanizing the Economy, Cooperatives in the Age of Capital by John Ristakis, who was one of our keynote speakers last
Yes.
year. There's an entire chapter devoted to Canadian cooperatives, social cooperatives, and social care. And it's all about how, in the wake of like just really bad policy leading to the deaths of our elderly, alone and isolated from each other when it wasn't
In
necessary. And
disgusting conditions,
right,
disgusting, humiliating, painful conditions.
and that led to the formation of a bunch of client cooperatives that were based around long-term care
Mm,
and end-of-life care.
yeah.
And hats off, they identified a need that unfortunately was written in blood, metaphorically. I don't think anybody actually bled out, but they died. And if we can avoid people dying in order to create something good, I'll take that. And I really, yeah, yeah. Mm. Just
Yeah.
there's something about like how there's a synthesis between bringing together the doctors and the nurses, like them together first and foremost, because like I think so often there's like an antagonistic relationship between the doctor
Yeah.
and the other professional staff.
I
And
found
one
a
of
nurse who knew all about my condition, knew had worked with it before, was willing to work with my doctor. He just wouldn't. Just wouldn't. What can you do? You can't make them. He wouldn't listen to anyone. I would bring him, scientific evidence. I don't know what happened in his head. It was like he would read it and he could not internalize it. That there was something wrong with his brain.
yeah. But I'll tell you what we can do, to answer your rhetorical question. How rude of me. But we can form an association of potential clients that are like, hey, we need a good doctor. And then they can hire. Or they can
Yeah.
support. They can sponsor. They can find somebody who like wants to do this study, wants to go into this field, and just needs a bit of help, a bit of push. And that's where I think something like VAWMA can come in. And maybe we don't use this as a flagship venture for VAWMA, seeing as it's. I don't think you can do it for profit in Ontario. Legally speaking, I don't think you should be able to. Doug Ford may be changing that. Boo. But point of the matter is, once we've got the business portion of VAWMA up and running, and we're making money, and we've got money to invest in, this is the sort of thing that we can say, hey, we can put up like $100,000 for an education bursary to put somebody to school for like 5 years or 8 years or whatever it takes to get them to the place where they can then come back and work with our members, our clients, and who are in long-term care needs. Or even better, we don't have to find somebody who's like at the beginning of their 8-year process. We can find people who are like about to graduate and say, hey, how would you like to have a guaranteed practice or something? We're hiring. We need someone to fit these roles, and if you're willing to fit these roles, you get to be, you're on probation for a year or two, and if we like you, you can if you prove that you're not what's a good pejorative description, if you can prove you're not a jerk, that seems fairly safe enough, then we'll give you a way for a buy-in to sit on the circle that's running this.
And you got to sell the area, like the beautiful waterfalls and summer folk and
Yeah.
symphony. I mean, how many small towns have a symphony?
Right. Yeah. Well, indeed. And we'll hopefully be using we'll be building up a cooperative network of other businesses as well. So like, and this is the question, like, if they're non-profit or not for profit, how does patronage work in a situation like that? They probably don't have patronage. And how would they be able to work in the? Okay, so clearly I've got some homework to do. I need to research, how if and how patronage is works in a non-profit cooperative setting.
Yeah, I know. My eyeballs glanced over some things mentioning not nonprofit, but of course I wasn't focusing on that, so I don't
Yeah.
remember at all what they said.
As I basically understand it, you can make money, you just can't pay that money out to investors.
Mm.
So as a nonprofit, so any money that you make that's surplus to what the business requires, either has to be reinvested within the business, or it goes to charity, or it goes
But you're
to
still paying wages,
hmm?
right?
Oh yeah.
So
So we can make sure that everybody who's involved is definitely getting competitive living wages and stuff like that. So that's, I don't feel like that would be a problem.
yeah,
And the real question would be, because oh, lost you again. Let me pull you up. Oh no, we lost Rebecca. Such is life. We are having technical difficulties. But either way, I will say, I'll just go to the solo talking head there. I will say that it's an intriguing possibility that we could set up something that allows for clients, members who have a very specific need and desire for something that yeah, it should be fine. That can meet their needs, especially if they have special needs, or for healthcare stuff. This is the sort of thing that VAWMA hopes to be able to invest in and hopes to be able to bring people together in order to do. So I guess the overarching vision is, VAWMA starts with a bunch of friends coming together, just checking in with each other, making sure everybody's okay. Once we've done that, we pool together our material resources as well as our skills and our talents, and then we start businesses cooperatively. And when those businesses make money, we all come together to figure out what we're going to do with that money. The board of directors will be apportioning things to, like, consumer patronage, workers patronage, that sort of thing, and which are the payouts that we give to our members when we make a surplus. But in addition to that, we also have community investment funds and also money that we will set aside to invest in future businesses. That's my hope, because like if we can take the millions of dollars that big box corporations send out into the world, and spread that money throughout our local economy instead, both individuals to spend as they will, but also like to take big concentrated lump sums and say, okay, we recognize that we need we have a bunch of people with long-term chronic illnesses that need to be looked after, and we don't have that in our area. So why don't we make it? And then we make it. It's really is that simple, and probably stupidly complicated once we get down to the nitty-gritty of actually doing it. But the point of the matter is, when we were talking about the millions of dollars and stuff, if we can convince customers to spend their money at our drive-thru rather than at somebody else's, or if we can convince people to buy their stuff from our brick and mortar buildings rather than from the brick and mortar buildings of our competitors, that's more money that stays within our local economy that gets spread out between us rather than goes to Bay Street or Wall Street, which again, that's one way of doing things, I guess, that allows for the captains and titans of industry to be able to buy more super yachts. I'm not particularly interested in giving them more super yachts. I'm, again, interested in being able to own a house that has enough room for me and my kids so that I can raise them in a happy, healthy, safe environment, where they can grow and thrive and have access to all sorts of things that allow them to maximize their potential, to experience the most that they can into this world while they can. And to that end, I think I'm probably going to, I don't know, I got 10 minutes, and Rebecca hasn't returned yet, so I hope everything's okay on her end. Regardless, I will say that if there's a way, and I believe there are ways, for allowing independent cooperatives to come and be a part of our network, to be able to have delegates to sit on our board of directors circle, and to have a say in what's going on, so long as they meet the certain criteria, like the 7 cooperative principles. Are they? Oh, now I got to remember if I can remember all the cooperative principles. It's a free and voluntary membership, member democratic control, member economic participation. What is the fourth one? Fourth one is autonomy and independence. Fifth one is education, information, and training. Sixth one is going to be cooperation amongst cooperatives. And seventh, of course, is concern for community. And these are all the guiding principles of what it means to be a cooperative, and what we do and how we do it. As the old song says, cooperation makes it happen. Cooperation is working together. Dig it. And maybe one of these days we will take a portion of that song and kind of use it as our outro or something. I think we could probably get away with 12 seconds worth of that. Probably not much longer. Regardless, when the reason I'm doing all of this at the end of the day is because I realized at one point where I sat in our economy and the way it is structured, and I realized that in the labor theory of value and the labor theory of how everything is set up, I am I'm a worker, which is fine. I like being a worker. I like doing things. I like producing stuff. I like seeing the fruit of my labors, and I like feeling the pride that comes with what it is that I've done. One of my favorite memories was when I was a manager at a bowling alley, and I really felt like I had taken personal ownership of that place, even though I had no actual share or stake in the company. But that was my place. That was my environment. That was where I went. And when a customer came in, they were my customers, and my goal was to ensure that they had the best possible experience while they were there. And I just like that's a kind of who I am. That when I take on a project, I try to do it to the best of my ability. Not always successful. Not always am I able to pull things off, but when I can, it's good. And regardless, I get to thinking that wouldn't it be nice if there was by default, instead of when I took on a ownership of a business personally, instead of it being something that um, I put all my life, blood, and energy and effort into, and don't see anything but return from it other than what wage that they pay me in order to keep coming back tomorrow. The cooperative system, allows me a slice of the pie. It gives me a portion of what it is that I produce. Now, it's not all of it, and that's appropriate. I'm not the only person working at this business, and when we start VAWMA, I'm not going to be the only person working there. In fact, I'm going to be one of like dozens, maybe hundreds of people, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Heck, maybe one of these days, millions of people. And by the time we're millions of people large, hopefully we'll be making millions, perhaps billions of dollars. And at that point, the money that we're making, the surplus that we're generating, knock on wood, will be circulated and redistributed back amongst the local economies that money is being generated in. Maybe one of these days we'll go over some of the theories of value and the theories of like how things are produced, which I'm just kind of learning myself, to be honest. So take it as what it is, a very pedestrian sort of education with a lot of fun little colloquialisms and a very strange accent that tends to kind of like slur everything together because it's more fun that way. In either case, I do want to just thank everybody who has decided to come and join us here today. It's not a really good strong lander. Let's land on this. Cooperatives are all about coming together in cooperation. And when I think about the people who are so often pitted against each other, like when Rebecca was talking earlier about being a person who suffers from a chronic illness and how that brings you to a place where you become an expert in your field, and being able to bring an expert in the field, in this case the subject of the pain, together with the professional in the field, the person who's been to school for the purposes of learning how to apply medicine and techniques in order to mitigate harm and pain and things like that, bring them together in a non-adversarial way in order to be able to come together, so the doctor, nurses, and PSWs, personal support workers, can all effectively do what it is that they've been trained to do: care for the person, and the person that needs the care can have an avenue to be able to effectively communicate their needs and their desires in that moment and what they need to get out of that particular relationship. It's a fundamental rebalancing of how we can do society. Not a guarantee that things are going to work out well. If I've learned anything in life is that people under capitalism, especially under capitalism, are driven to look out for their own needs, because if they don't, nobody else will. And I don't like that antagonistic way of doing society. I think that creates problems in the long run, some of which we're beginning to see in our society play out since we adopted some of these policies in the 1980s. And to that end, I think that VAWMA is the solution. I think that VAWMA is how we're going to bring it to a close. And I just saw that I had a hiccup there. I hope everything's okay. Either way, I'm going to land it there. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Leave a message or a comment in the thing below with regards to what your thoughts are about cooperatives and doing things cooperatively. And if you haven't done so already, you can check out in our description underneath here a link to our Facebook group, which is probably the best place to stay in communication with us as we grow and build this idea together. In either case, I just want to remind everybody that they are awesome, that that you are good people, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. And hopefully I'll have had enough time to put together some slides so we can actually do the long fabled yet to be produced part number 6, cooperation between cooperatives, and where the intersection between that and the VAWMA vision. So take care everybody. Love you all. Live long and prosper, and we'll take care. See you next week.